Colombia is a beautiful country found at the northern tip of South America, neighboring Ecuador, Panama, Brazil, Venezuela, and Peru. Its population is approximately 46.93 million people, and its area is close to 2 times the size of Texas. Although Colombia hosts beautiful landscapes and a rich culture, it continues to be affected by a dark past that has been taken to new extremes in the present. During this time, the internal conflicts caused by rebel and terrorist groups like the FARC and ELN have caused so much tensions and extreme violence that Colombians have to flee from their rural lands to the cities and surrounding countries. The continuous conflicts with narc traffickers have become so prominent in the urban areas that some Colombians have found the only solution to the problem is the migration to other countries in search of a safe haven. To begin with a little history, the guerrilla group the FARC, also known as Las Fuerzas Revolucionarias Armadas de Colombia or the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, emerged in 1961, in the midst of the rising conflict between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat classes. Formed by intellectual liberals fighting for equality, they embraced many of the Marxist views of that time. To this day, they continue to be the root cause for the period known as La Violencia that has plagued Colombia since the 60s. The guerrilla group now holds around 18,000 people, and the damages effects created are irreparable. The ELNL, Ejército de Liberación Nacional, or the National Liberal Army, also emerged in 1964 with similar Marxist ideas. Although not as well known, alongside the FARC, it continues to create terror, violence, and pain to its people. The legacy left by Pablo Escobar as one of the most notorious drug dealers of Colombia has left the country a bad reputation and therefore in a constant war against drugs and narco trafficking. The combination of this illegal trade and the guerrilla groups has left the country in shambles, where power and money have become the main objective. The irony then lies behind the fact that no longer is it the original doctrine for these groups to obtain equality, but rather money and power. This has created unscrupulous groups that have invaded rural areas and indigenous reservations for the planting of coca and other drugs. The ultimate result is complete turmoil. So you might be wondering what this has to do with refugee populations. The fact is that the FARC and ELN groups in alliance to the narco traffickers have created areas inhabitable by Colombians and have even forced people out of their homes through military force or threat. At this point, Colombians are either internally displaced or choose to seek asylum in surrounding countries like Ecuador. The effects that these groups have left are easy to see, with 40 years of continuous violence, 50,000 to 200,000 deaths, 3.5 million internally displaced people, and 500 to 700,000 refugees. Colombians then often seek refuge as their only escape from violence and conflict in their own country. To the west of Colombia lies Ecuador, a country often chosen as an area for refuge by Colombians that holds a smaller population of 14.67 million people and a land area comparable to Nevada. The refugee camp, Barranca Bermeja, exists nestled in the thick jungles in between the border of Colombia and Ecuador. The influx of refugees into Ecuador is often higher than expected, but the fact is that those who make it over the border to Ecuador in safety do not stay in the refugee camp. The camp is small and understocked. Barranca Bermeja hosted around 70 families as of 2007. Most of them are refugees from the violence that has plagued parts of Colombia for decades. There are then around 51,000 registered Colombian refugees in Ecuador, but UNHCR estimates that about 135,000 people are in need of international protection. As you can see by the chart above, the number of Colombians seeking asylum greatly increased in the early 2000s as the situation in Colombia worsened. Unfortunately, not everyone can be given asylum, and the issues with refugee camps like Barranca Bermeja are common in Ecuador. Colombians struggle to receive refuge due to Ecuadorian standards, which are notoriously difficult as they hold very closely to the standards imposed by the international community. For this reason, the situation in Colombia can be often described as the invisible crisis, a characterization of Colombian refugees in Ecuador which have become a voiceless population with insufficient money and resources to flee Colombia or remain within. Barranca Bermeja and the other refugee camps in the area have a lot of issues that are problematic to the refugees. The main village is run down with no running water or electricity. There is little knowledge about the size and the needs of the local population. There are large safety issues in terms of protecting them from the guerrilla and other military groups. The communication and transportation through the unpaved roads and inaccessible waterways has made it more difficult for Ecuador to support a healthy environment for its refugees. The government has made efforts to improve its response to victims of displacement and implement new measures such as the Victims and Land Restitution Law. There still remains widespread security risk and violence that involve the forced recruitment of youth into paramilitaries, the continuing sexual and gender-based violence against women and girls, and other disappearances and problematic murders continue to haunt many areas of the country. There has been a growth in urban violence and displacement. The problem in Colombia does not seem to end. UNHCR has some proposed solutions for the upcoming years and more specifically for 2013. They are working to include more security and protection from violence and exploitation, increased monitoring in the areas of Colombia and Ecuador in order to enhance protection by presence in the municipalities most affected by armed conflict throughout the years. There will also be new measures implemented to minimize forced recruitment. Protection imposed to reduce the risk of SGBV will also be included, as well as the quality of such response will be improved through the incorporation of community participation and a secure and confidential reporting system. There will be national laws and policies for forced displacement that will hold to international standards, and finally an all-encompassing comprehensive solution strategy will be developed, strengthened, and updated. One where all parties will agree on a comprehensive solution strategy and the potential for local integration will be realized. These will all be the goals that the UNHCR hopes to accomplish in the upcoming year. Although there is much violence and conflict that plague Colombia to this day, with the help of the government and other international communities like UNHCR, there is a hope that Colombia will be able to breathe easy again. The proposed programs by the UNHCR hope to increase safety of its refugees and IDPs, increase asylum to those in Ecuador in the movement from migrants to citizenship, and the overall protection of the Colombian people in rural and urban areas, along with the cooperation of terrorist groups FARC and ELN in hopes of attaining a bright future for Colombia. To learn more about the crisis in Colombia and how you can get involved, please visit these websites below. They include data, strategies, and other programs that can aid in helping Colombia to a new future.